The content of this episode may not be suitable for some audiences. Listener's discretion is advised. Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. In part 2 of Lauren's story, Virginia and Lauren discuss her journey to finding rest. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
So after that season in your life passed, but it was a pilgrimage to that. And we don't need the blow by blow of it all. But is there any significant part from that stage of your life to when you began working in mental health that you'd like to share?
Yes. So I guess it was a call assistant or associate at a psychiatrist office. My friend had got me the position, and it was the first step I wanted to take to go into the mental health field because I just was so strong in it. And I believed that there could be real help and healing if we would just take the time to stop and listen. So I would get on the phone with these people. They would want to just mainly make appointments to see the psychiatrist or refill their medication most of the time. And it was really eye-opening for me because I had already had like this torn feeling when it came to medication. Again, I know that some people do need medication for a certain time.
Yeah, we're not throwing the baby out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
it's overused.
It was very overused. And just hearing the calls for people wanting to fill their 4, 5, 6, 7 different medications they were on for antidepressants, psychotics, anxiety, sleep pills, and to ages 5 years old to all the way to 95. Wow. I couldn't believe it, just how reliant people were. It almost are. And it almost reminded me of just my addict days and how it felt like I needed it in order to get by and cope and survive this world. And I just was just blown away and lost for words a lot of times. And it really started kind of breaking my heart and just kind of just something just didn't feel right. I wanted to not be in that position answering those calls anymore because I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. Hearing 6-year-olds on like 4 different medications just because their parents couldn't take that they were hyperactive and that they just wanted to sleep and not deal with it themselves. So I became a TMS technician with that company, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. And it's magnets tapping at your prefrontal cortex, and it's supposedly supposed to help unblock blocked neural pathways that cause depression, anxiety, and insomnia. And I did that for about a year, and I did see some temporary improvement with the depression and anxiety and insomnia, but it wasn't long lasting. It would last 6 months to a year, about $13,000 treatment. Insurance did cover it, but only covered 70, 80, 90%. So you still had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket for this treatment that wouldn't last. And I would try and work with the psychiatrist to help clients taper off medications or not be on so many medications, but they didn't want to work with me as much. They wanted to.
They're making a lot of money.
They're making money. It's exactly. They wanted them to stay on it, and people weren't given the tools. So they would get scared, all the thoughts coming back in their head, not knowing how to handle life, cope with life. And then they would go back on the same medications, change up their medications, increase their dose, and then come back to me and be like, why didn't this work? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I even wasn't being given the tools. Like, I just was kind of thrown into it and expected to just do what they told me.
Triggering.
It was very triggering. And I ended up being put on a medication because it was so in conflict with my beliefs and my morals and gut instincts and intuition that I thought I was even going a little crazy being in it. And I ended up being misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, with manic depression, and being put on an anti-psychotic medication. And yeah, it was
standard of care.
I'm still like talking about it, shocked that even happened, like that was even allowed. But it was kind of normalized. Even like the PAs and the MDs didn't really see anything wrong with what they were doing and stuff because that's what they were taught in school. And that's
and I think if in terms of the TMS, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the cost between that and the medication, you have a client for life. And when you're making $13,000, $15,000, actually probably more, $15,000 on one client, and they have to come back for the meds every month, you do the math and you realize it's a profitable enterprise.
Exactly. And that's what started creating that dis-ease within myself. And I knew I had to get out of it because I was going to lose my mind. And I was starting to get back to that point where I just wanted to end my life because something just wasn't lining up and didn't feel right. And also I just saw the corruption and just the evil being done.
I think that's what a lot of people don't see, what's behind the scenes of the complex.
Exactly.
And you came and interviewed with us at that time.
I did at that point. My roommate, Natalie, who used to run the podcast, who's my best friend as well, told me that there was a job opening for R.E.S.T, and how I was reading about it and how people were actually finding hope and healing from their like depression, insomnia. They were getting energy back, their memory. And I was like, wow, like something where it's not afflicting on the brain and the body, but actually the brain and body healing itself. I'm like, that is what I want to do. That is more in line with what I believe, because like we talk about all the time, God has given us the resources and we just have to tap into them.
They're woven into our very anatomy.
Exactly.
And I want to be careful that no one feels shame or blamed or guilt. I also want you to know that if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and if you've been on meds for any long period of time, there's a movement among the mental health community, I believe, and among a lot of psychiatrists that are really pro freedom, and they want to see their patients and their clients just become free of their dependency on meds. So there's this education system, I think. There's this transition. There's this revolution, perhaps, that we're all a part of. And there's a lot of people fighting to make the system better.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's the majority of them, but there's a lot of good therapists out there, a lot of good psychiatrists out there doing excellent work. Mm-hmm. We just want to encourage you, if you're listening to this, that there are integrative resources, biofeedback, neurofeedback, remedies.
Mm-hmm. Even nutritionists.
Nutritionists. Yeah. It's a complex system. Even discipleship, counseling, and spiritual formation. Your spirit working through a soul and a body. There's many facets of this pilgrimage to recovery. Yes. And there's amazing resources out there for you. And of course, this is one of our favorite conversations. When you began interviewing with me, we have multiple layers of the interviewing process. And in the middle of this, I got a call from Natalie and saying, I have a friend that's in trouble and you're talking to her. And they may admit her into a psych ward and we're terrified. Can you get her in tomorrow morning? And I said, absolutely. And we moved some things around in that next morning. Either I came in real early or we moved some, I don't know, Natalie always worked magic, but we got you in that day. Mm-hmm. And you were so embarrassed and ashamed because you'd been interviewing with us, yet you're falling apart.
Yeah, that was so hard for me to admit, but I realized like the first step is to actually speaking up and saying that I am not okay. And I just hoped and prayed that it wouldn't interfere with hoping to get the job here because I wanted it so bad. And I just wanted to get out of where I was because I just, as you could see, I wanted to end my life. It got to that point where I almost did admit myself again into a 5150 hole. Exactly. It was so close.
It feels so good to confidently say, can you give me a few days? Can you give me a week? Can we try a few things? Mm-hmm. And of course, you can go and do and be admitted and get the help you need. Of course, it's always accessible to you. Mm-hmm. But I remember saying, I know exactly what to do. Mm-hmm. Let's step into rest. Let's reason together. Let's hear what your body's carrying. Let's see how your brain is communicating with itself. Let's see how your psychoneuroimmunology is working together. And as we began to peel back the layers of that, you have been nothing but a blossoming seed. It is beautiful. Things have to die sometimes for the seed of a new thing to bring forth new fruit, new life. And that's your story. I think a lot of the guilt, the shame, the corruption, and it comes off in layers, right?
Mm-hmm. Lots of layers. So many.
So many layers. But when I think of the good that you do and these guys, these first responders, our clients, our patients, some are patients, some are clients, and of course our first responders, to see people's joy talking about your level of compassion and sensitivity and wisdom and engaging them as you've matured into your position is an incredible thing. Healing's a process. And I think if we can look at the many layers and components of what that looks like, and we can just lock arms, maybe rally with each other, and above all else, not be afraid. I think we can turn this thing around, this problem we have with mental health and addictions. I think we can turn it all around in one generation.
Yeah, I think so too.
You're a giant among us. And I told you this from the early stages of my part in your recovery and as your employer. But I've told you that I think voices like yours are perhaps going to make the most significant contribution to healing the hemorrhaging heart of your generation, of a generation.
Yeah, I plan on it.
I know you're doing it.
Yes.
Thank you, Lauren. Closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts is I see the brokenness in people's hearts and in their minds. And I just want everyone to know that there is not only hope, but there is freedom if we start by peeling back the layers, like you said, and not be afraid, taking that next step on whatever your healing journey might look like. Just fully just dive into it, knowing that there is freedom that will come from it.
Oh, so beautiful. Dare to be vulnerable with yourself and others.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Virginia.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of rest, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.